Hey everybody, welcome back to a Video Game Esoteric, and I realized something when I did the Hyper Neo Geo MAME emulation comparison video, and that is the fact that I have never revisited Samurai Shodown 64 or its sequel Samurai Shodown 64 2. So we're going to remedy that today because there's a lot of improvements in MAME, and I've been talking to the dev on that and got him some footage over for Buriki One, and I figured now is a great time to revisit these two games because I absolutely love them. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe. That notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. Now right off the top, I love these two games. If you don't like them, that's fine. For some reason, I always get so much hate from certain people when I talk about the Hyper Neo Geo 64. If it's not for you, that is fine. It's for me, and a lot of other people like it too, which means we're going to keep talking about it. And I've always enjoyed Samurai Shodown 64. It is my preferred game over the sequel. It just has a more fluid feel to it, and the graphical presentation and story are just a little bit more to my liking versus the sequel, although that is great as well. And this, honestly, is one of the rare games on the platform. It's going to be a lot harder for you to find Samurai Shodown 64 than it's going to be the sequel. It's one of those weird situations where it just doesn't make any sense to me, but that's just how the way it is. But honestly, I've always loved the combat in Samurai Shodown, and in 64 it's got that same feeling, except now you have full range of motion in 3D. This game has always played different than any other SNK property outside of something like The Last Blade, where the combos aren't as fast, they're not as heavy, but one strike can take a quarter to half of your opponent's life bar off at once. Like right there, one good slash and we took basically like 30% of the life directly away. The cadence of matches in the Samurai Shodown series has always had a different, unique feel, and seeing it all happen in 3D for the first time is just something I absolutely love. Now, I'm not trying to say the Hyper Neo Geo 64 is any sort of graphical powerhouse. When it came out on the market, it was definitely not as impressive as what somebody like Sega or Namco had on arcade floors, and I think people were really expecting a lot from SNK when they went to 3D. It is no surprise this hardware was not successful. That does not mean though that the games are not fun, they're not impressive, and it was interesting to see SNK go into the 3D arena having been such a 2D powerhouse, because this to me is the same Samurai Shodown that you know and love, just with 3D models in a 3D play space. There's definitely some weight and slowness to the controls. It's not a lag, but it has a heavier feel than something like the King of Fighters or Fatal Fury. Even in 3D, when you get to Fatal Fury Wild Ambition, that game feels faster than this. Samurai Shodown 64 is methodical. It makes you think about what you're going to do, and it's going to make you think about when you want to strike and when you want to back up. And I also love that you get these intercut sequences here with this gigantic character just falling from the sky. It's interesting, it's unique, and on the presentation front, I love big chunky polygons with big pixels. There is no real filtering here compared to something like a Nintendo 64 game, but I love that. If you didn't grow up in this era, maybe you think it looks ugly. I'm not trying to say it looks amazing, I'm just trying to say I love what it is going for. And all these little intercuts here with these special moves as well. SNK did not leave out detail in this game. They did everything they could to try to make it as interesting and amazing as possible, and I think they succeeded. Although I'm not sure what happens at this match here. It seems like somehow I both win and lose at the same time. I thought I'd actually lost, but it seems like I won. There must be some condition where this happens. You win. I don't know. I've never seen it before, and I played this game an absolute ton. Just like trying to fall off the bridge here. I have never once seen anyone fall off the bridge or an arena, even though I know it is possible. So this game has a few secrets even I don't know about, and I've been playing it for years now. But honestly, it's just an absolute blast, and I love this sort of stuff in 3D. I was super impressed when this came to arcades back in the day, and I knew when I started arcade collecting I needed all of the Hyper Neo Geo games, and I obviously have done that since then, because if you didn't realize already, I am playing this on real hardware. Am I saying that this is the type of game you should go out and buy? Maybe. I really don't know. What I do know is it's got a spectacular soundtrack, so go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds and I'll be right back.
いざ尋常に一本目勝負
I've always enjoyed the Samurai Shodown soundtrack, and it's no different here in Samurai Shodown 64, and I love the sound effects as well. The Hyper Neo Geo 64 had some great sound hardware on board. Now, if anyone thinks that the capture is a little dark, that is because it is a little dark. It just seems to be how the Hyper Neo Geo 64 outputs video. Maybe there was a video amp inside of the cabinet. I'm not aware. I just have the motherboards. And I did lift the levels ever so slightly in Resolve. There's only so much I can push it before some of the detail starts to wash out. But it also is just a little bit of a darker game in its tone, and that's what I love outside of the fact that these are 3D models. I love the kind of design aesthetic that SNK went with this game. It's very dark, it's moody. You have these arenas in which walls disappear until the camera pivots around them. In some ways it almost feels like a diorama, but I like the design decisions the artists made when they were making this game. They seem to have a good handle on what the hardware was capable of, and they really chose a palette that works and feels like different things than we were seeing in the arcade. Like if we move on to another area with another character, this snow level with those blues, those dark trees in the background with just a little bit of pop of color here and there. From an art direction standpoint, it really does stand out as a fine piece of work. Even if this isn't as graphically capable as other hardware on the market at the time, the artists knew what they were doing because SNK had some very talented artists working with them. So even if it's not as pretty as something like the Sega Model 3, the art direction I think holds up extremely well, and I absolutely love it. I love these little vignettes you get when you go into a match as well, or the fact that we're in this little dojo and you can see the windows open with that background there, and the background does move and rotate at a different speed than your character and the rest of the arena, so it really does give a sense of a full 3D space, or as well as SNK could do with the hardware. But again, back to the combat, I just love the weightiness of this, and I understand I am not the best at this game because I have no real opponents to play against. I have no friends in real life that like fighting games. They mostly play JRPGs and stuff like Resident Evil. No knock on that, I just don't know anyone in real life that likes fighters, so I have to play against the CPU basically all the time. But it does give me enough to be entertained by, and that's all I ask of a game if I want to keep coming back to it and playing it. And I will say, like every 3 to 6 months, I take my Hyper Neo Geo 64 motherboard out of the closet and I put on at least one of these fighting games, and I've been doing that for years. And I love those little cutaway vignettes as well. When your bones get broken, you get this little almost X-ray look into your body. Like right here, you're going to get your neck snapped, and it reminds me a lot of what Mortal Kombat did. But one more taste of the soundtrack because it's very diverse and interesting, and I will be right back, but enjoy. I love that track, and I love the fact that in some arenas you can fall through the floor or wall. It's just an extra layer of fun for you to enjoy. But let's move on to the boss encounters in this game, because I will say they're some of my favorite on the Hyper Neo Geo 64. Now, you're not going to get any story as far as text and narration is concerned. It's almost all going to be done in cutscenes that really have no voices and no text over them. And honestly, when I show you the credits, it's going to be in Japanese, so we're not really even going to know what's happening anyway. But I do love the visual storytelling in this game, and I love all of the effects that are available on the Hyper Neo Geo 64. This isn't a 3D powerhouse, but there's a lot of different visual flair that SNK can put up on the screen. Like this vortex in the background actually appears in the front of the screen as well, is a transparent sort of texture. It's very hard to notice, but it is there, and it is a really nice touch. But I will say, as far as the boss encounters in this game are concerned, they're relatively fair, especially from an SNK perspective. Usually the bosses are going to 100% just mop the floor with you. I take a loss here in the first instance, but as soon as I choose a different character, I am able to get that W up on screen. And that's the thing. If you play this game constantly, you're probably going to get to the point where you can run it on normal mode in 1 credit. it's relatively not cheap, and that's what you can pretty much, the best thing you can say about an SNK game is it's not going to completely destroy you towards the end when you get to the boss. But I love the fact that it's a multi-stage boss encounter as well, because now that we're through the first round, we have to move on to the actual final boss of the game. And I will say this is a very weird thing to make a statement on, but this I think is the easiest final boss in any SNK fighting game ever made. So much so that it seems like maybe it's a programming bug. If you keep your distance, you are going to die from ranged attacks. As long as you stay close to the boss, pretty much any attack is going to hit, and they don't seem to want to block anything whatsoever. You will get pushed back now and again, but if you get close enough with a full life bar and just use any attack you want, for the most part, you're almost going to be guaranteed a win. You'll see there that some of those range attacks did get me in a little bit of a stagger animation, but once you get close enough to them, that is it. They really can't seem to block anything, and you're basically going to go in for almost a default victory. Now honestly, it's a little bit of a disappointment because I want a little bit more out of a final boss, but honestly on the other end of the spectrum, it could be a final boss that is practically impossible to beat, and that's never fun as well. So it's kind of, I wish there was something in the middle for it, but once you get this far, if you want to see the ending, it's really not going to be that difficult to do whatsoever, and it seems to be like that for all characters. And this, whatever the hell it is, comes out of its body and just kind of explodes into the ether. So here's the thing about Samurai Shodown 64. I just straight up love this game, and I love the Hyper Neo Geo 64. Yeah, the polygons are blocky, yeah, the pixels are big, but I love that, and I feel like a lot of people discount these games because they're not the prettiest things around, but honestly if you play them, there's a lot of fun to be had. I'm not saying this is the best game SNK ever made, I'm saying it's not a bad game. There seems to be some perception out there that it in fact isn't good. Give it a try. You can play this on MAME today. You're not going to get the soundtrack because the sound emulation just really doesn't work, but the developers that are working on the Hyper Neo Geo 64 have these games to a state where you can 100% play them, enjoy them, and get to experience them. And hey, maybe you will decide that you want to pick a Hyper Neo Geo 64 up for yourself as well. I know some other people that I've talked to have purchased them and they've been quite happy with them. But yeah, we've never revisited this game. I don't know how I forgot to do that, but Samurai Shodown 64 is an awesome time in my opinion, and I will see you guys next time. Game's over. Bye bye.